I know that this will drive some of our Republican friends a little crazy. You'll probably hear it tonight. They will say that guns are a totally separate issue, nothing to do with terrorism. Well, I have news for them. Terrorists use guns to kill Americans, and I think we should make it a lot harder for them to do that ever again. And there's a question they should be asked. Why don't the Republican candidates want to do that? You see, I have this old-fashioned idea that we elect a president in large part, to keep us safe from terrorists, from gun violence, from whatever threatens our families and communities, and I'm not going to let the gun lobby or anyone else tell me that's not the right path for us to go down. Now, the fourth element in my strategy is supporting law enforcement officers who risk their lives to prevent and respond to terrorist attacks. In San Bernardino, city, county, state, and federal authorities acted with speed and courage to prevent even more loss of life. Detective Jorge Lozano, a 15-year police veteran, assured terrified civilians, "I'll take a bullet before you do." There is no limit to the gratitude we owe to law enforcement professionals like that detective who run toward danger to try to save lives. And not just in the immediate wake of an attack. Our police, firefighters, and emergency responders will keep putting their lives on the line long after the cameras move on. It's really disgraceful that Congress has thus far failed to keep faith with first responders suffering from the lasting health effects of 9/11. Many of them were men and women I was so proud to represent as a senator from New York. The Zadroga 9/11 Health Act never should have been allowed to lapse. It looks like Majority Leader McConnell may have finally dropped his opposition, and I hope the American people will hold him to that, and we will continue to honor the service and sacrifice of those who responded to the worst terrorist attack in our history. We have to make sure that local law enforcement has the resources and training they need to keep us safe. And they should be more closely synced up with national counterterrorism experts, including with better use of fusion centers that serve as clearinghouses for intelligence and coordination. And we need to strengthen our defenses and our resilience wherever we're vulnerable, whether it's soft targets like shopping malls or higher profile targets like airports, railways, or power plants. We have to build on the progress of the Obama administration in locking down loose nuclear materials and other WMD so they never fall into the hands of terrorists who seek them actively around the world. So we should be providing the Department of Homeland Security with the resources it needs to stay one step ahead, not trying to privatize key functions like TSA, as some Republicans have proposed. And it's important for us to recognize that when we talk about law enforcement, we have made progress in being sure that our federal authorities share information with our state and local authorities. But that was an issue I tackled after 9/11, and we have to stay really vigilant so that information is in the hands where it needs to be. Now, finally, the fifth element in the strategy is empowering Muslim American communities who are on the front lines in the fight against radicalization. There are millions of peace-loving American Muslims living, working, raising families, paying taxes in our country. These Americans These Americans may be our first, last, and best defense against homegrown radicalization and terrorism. They are the most likely to recognize the insidious effects of radicalization before it's too late, intervene to help set a young person straight. They are the best positioned to block anything going forward. That's why law enforcement has worked so hard since 9/11 to build up trust and strong relationships within Muslim American communities. Here in the Twin Cities, you have an innovative partnership that brings together parents, teachers, imams, and others in the Somali American community with law enforcement, nonprofits, local businesses, mental health professionals, and others to intervene with young people who are at risk. It's called the Building Community Resilience Pilot Program, and it deserves increased support. It has not gotten the financial resources that it needs to do everything the people involved in it know they can do, and we've got to do a better job of supporting it. Now, I know that, like many places across the country, there's more work to do to increase trust between communities and law enforcement. Just last month, I know here a young African-American man was fatally shot by a police officer, and I understand an investigation is underway. Whatever the outcome, tragedies like this raise hard questions about racial justice in America and put at risk efforts to build the community relationships that help keep us safe from crime and from terrorism. When people see that respect and trust are two-way streets, they are more likely to work hand in hand with law enforcement. One of the mothers of the 10 men recently charged with conspiring with terrorists said, "We have to stop the denial." She told other parents that. We have to talk to our kids and work with the FBI. That's a message we need to hear from leaders within Muslim American communities across our country. But we also want to highlight the successes in Muslim American communities, and there are so many of them. I just met with the first Somali American council member of the City Council here, and he was proudly telling me how much change Somali immigrants, now Muslim Americans, have made in parts of the city and neighborhoods that had been pretty much hollowed out. Let's look at the successes. If we're going to fully integrate everyone into America, then we need to be seeing all their contributions too. One of the many reasons why we must all stand up against offensive, inflammatory, hateful, anti-Muslim rhetoric. You know, not only do these comments cut against everything we stand for as Americans, they are also dangerous. As the director of the FBI told Congress recently, anything that erodes trust with Muslim Americans makes the job of law enforcement more difficult. We need every community invested in this fight, not alienated and sitting on the sidelines. One of the community leaders I met with told me that a lot of the children in the community are now afraid to go to school. They're not only afraid of being perceived as a threat, they are afraid of being threatened because